would you feel if every time that you pulled out your computer or iPad to look something up on Google, it was censored? Freedom is something very important to the United States, especially our freedom of speech. Although, with the recent years and new improvements in technology such as the internet and social media, the fact of freedom on the internet has been called into question. Other countries, like China, have began to monitor what their citizens can see on the internet, such as not enabling Skype, Facebook, or Twitter. Although, being from a generation that grew up with internet basically since the day we were born, and as long as I can remember, most have thought that we have complete freedom of speech on the internet. Although, freedom of speech on the internet is very important because it is technically under our First Amendment that has proven to protect books and newspapers as times have changed. This should also protect our use on the internet. Free speech on the internet has helped us continue our democracy by allowing us to learn about our political figures, and an effort to regulate the internet would threaten both our democracy and our First Amendment rights. According to the Institute of Free Speech, the internet is an empowering force for democracy. It connects people from all over the country to be able to communicate about politics. The internet has offered a large platform for speakers to be able to express their opinion about anything. According to Harvard, a large and growing group of internet participants have seized the opportunity to be able to make their thoughts available to a worldwide audience, far more easily than ever before. From the IUP, the greatest advance of free speech is that it adds a check on the power of government to prevent tyranny. This is an important factor that the United States has, but many other countries do not, considering if you make fun of their government, you might get thrown in jail. There are organizations that are the front of protecting online freedom of speech, such as the ACLU. And according to the ACLU, the first case in which the Supreme Court declared speech on the internet equally worthy of the First Amendment's historical protection was the case of Reno versus American Civil Liberties Union. Advertisement is a big deal when it comes to freedom of speech on the internet. The Institute for Free Speech says that internet speech reaches large audience at a low cost, unlike billboards and other forms of advertisement such as newspapers and magazines. Although there are far less regulations on online advertisement, which means they don't always have to tell the whole truth. Although there are some downsides to free speech on the internet, which can include the vulgar nature of people typing their opinions versus having to say them face-to-face to people, which can include bullying for young people. There are ethical scenarios where it can make it doubtful whether or not free speech is actually worth it, such as when it comes to websites such as WikiLeaks. The hacks that they do to be able to get their information are crimes, and it's very illegal. So, in turn, this would make those that use the information from these leaks abetting criminals. And WikiLeaks has endangered individuals since, according to the IUP, it's an organization that publishes private and confidential information from anonymous sources of leaks. According to the Indiana University, Congress introduced the proposed SHIELD Act, or the Act, which would have amended the Espionage Act of 1917. The Espionage Act was if people knowingly intruded on the safety or interest of the United States, any classified information concerning the human intelligence activities of the United States would be breaking the law. During wartime, our freedoms are usually impacted, although it makes you wonder if these restricted rights should always be applied or just in times like this. Some things should probably be minorly changed about the way that the internet is run when it comes to free speech. But for the most part, I believe that censorship would not be beneficial to the way this country is run, considering we are a democratic union and this would intrude on our democracy. It would be difficult to implement by not being able to decide what is and is not worth being censored. And although it would prevent any controversial issues from arising, as we've seen since the past election, It would make us unable to expose our government when things are wrong. Taking legal action would be difficult but effective when information is leaked that should not be leaked, and would be able to discourage similar behavior in the future, such as stealing confidential information and releasing stolen data. In summary, technology has blurred some of the jurisdictional lines, and not all speech is protected by freedom of speech. Freedom of speech on the internet is very important because it should technically be under our First Amendment, as we have protected books and newspapers. And as times have changed, this should also protect our use of the internet, because social media has, in fact, become like our books and newspaper. Free speech on the internet has helped us continue our democracy, and efforts to regulate the internet threaten both our democracy and our First Amendment rights. Thank you for listening and learning about why we should have freedom of speech on the internet.